It's a cold morning in downtown Los Angeles. The streets are bustling with commuters, the honking of horns filling the air, and the buzz of people rushing to work. Among the chaos, one figure stands out, a young boy with Down syndrome, wearing a simple red hoodie and jeans. He's standing on the corner of 5th Street and Broadway, holding a microphone in his hand, his eyes closed as he sings. His voice is unlike anything you'd expect in such a busy, noisy city. It's soft at first, hesitant, as if testing the air. But soon, it grows stronger, soaring with raw emotion, cutting through the hum of traffic and the chatter of passers-by. People stop and stare. Some pull out their phones, recording the boy's performance. Others stand frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. There's something about his voice. It's pure, unrefined, but filled with such a depth of feeling that it draws everyone in. No one knows who he is or where he came from, but in this moment, he owns the street. For the first time in a long while, the busy, indifferent city seems to pause. Among the crowd, a familiar figure watches from his sleek black Tesla parked at the curb. Elon Musk is on his way to an important meeting, but he's distracted. The boy's voice has caught his attention, and for a moment, the world around him fades away. He rolls down his window slightly, straining to hear the sound more clearly. The words are unintelligible, but the emotion is undeniable. Elon hasn't been this moved in a long time. He's used to power, wealth, and innovation. But this is something different. The boy's song seems to hit him at a deeper level, stirring something long buried inside. He watches in silence, his breath catching in his chest. As the song comes to an end, the boy opens his eyes and smiles. The crowd erupts into applause. But before anyone can say anything, the boy disappears into the crowd, vanishing as quickly as he appeared. Elon stares at the spot where the boy stood, feeling something inside him stir. He doesn't know why, but he feels an urge to find this boy, to understand who he is, and to learn why he has this strange power to move people with nothing but his voice. What would you do if you encountered something like this? Would you seek out the person who left you speechless, or would you walk away, unsure of what to make of it? Share your thoughts in the comments. His name was Jordan, but everyone who knew him just called him Jay. At least, that's what his friends at school used to call him. The name was short, easy, and sounded like everyone else's name. Jordan loved the way it felt when someone said it aloud, like he was just another kid, another person who belonged. But in truth, it wasn't always that simple. Jordan had Down syndrome, something that set him apart from most kids at school. It wasn't that the other kids were unkind. It was just that they didn't know how to understand him. They didn't know how to react to the way he laughed too loud, or the way he stumbled over his words. And so, they ignored him. They whispered behind his back or avoided eye contact when he passed by in the hallways. He was different, and in the world of schoolyard politics, being different meant you were invisible. But at home, Jordan was anything but invisible. His mother, Clara, had always believed in him. She would kneel down beside him every night, brushing his hair away from his face, telling him, "You are capable of anything, my love. You are so strong, and you are beautiful." It was these words that kept Jordan grounded, words that reminded him of who he was, even when the world around him told him otherwise. His father, Michael, wasn't as vocal in his support, but his actions spoke volumes. Michael worked long hours, barely home enough to have dinner with the family, but every chance he got, he made sure to show Jordan how proud he was. He taught him how to ride a bike, how to throw a ball, and even how to fix things around the house. They didn't always speak the same language, but Jordan knew that his father loved him in his own quiet, steady way. There were nights when Jordan's parents would lie awake in bed, whispering about the future. Clara would often voice her fears. "What will happen when we're gone?" she would ask, her voice thick with worry. "Who will take care of him? Will he be okay?" Michael would always reassure her, but even he wasn't sure. The world outside their home was a different place, a place where Jordan's differences might not be understood or accepted. Despite the struggles, there was one place where Jordan always felt free: the streets of downtown Los Angeles. The city was loud, chaotic, and brimming with all kinds of people, but for Jordan, it felt like the perfect stage. He loved music, especially singing. It didn't matter if it was pop, rock, or something from a Broadway show. He knew the lyrics, he knew the notes, and most of all, he knew how to feel the music deep in his bones. The first time he sang in public was at a neighborhood block party when he was 10. He had grabbed a microphone, stood in front of the small crowd, and started belting out the lyrics to a classic Beatles song. At first, people were shocked. No one expected such a clear, powerful voice to come from a young boy with Down syndrome. But soon enough, the crowd was cheering him on, clapping along to the beat. Jordan felt a rush like no other. The more he sang, the more the world seemed to melt away, and all that was left was the sound of his own voice, echoing into the night. Since that day, Jordan had been singing whenever he could. Sometimes it was on the sidewalk, other times in parks or outside local coffee shops. He didn't care where he was. All that mattered was that he could sing. He didn't sing for fame, or money, or attention. He sang because it made him feel whole, made him feel like he belonged somewhere in this vast, noisy world. And in those moments, when he let go and lost himself in the music, everything else faded into the background. But Jordan had a secret fear, a fear that maybe he would never be seen for who he truly was. Maybe he would always be that boy who was different, the boy people didn't know how to understand. Every time he took the microphone, a little voice in the back of his head would ask, "What if this is all for nothing?" The city was full of voices, each one fighting to be heard above the others. Jordan wasn't sure if anyone would ever truly hear his voice, but he hoped. One thing was certain. He didn't want to just be known for being that boy with Down syndrome. He wanted to be known for his talent, his passion, and his heart. He wanted to show people that there was more to him than his condition, that there was a whole world inside him, waiting to be discovered. So, every day, he sang. On street corners, in bus stops, anywhere he could find an audience, no matter how small. His family, while proud, often worried. Clara would remind him, "Be careful, Jay. People can be cruel." And Michael would say, "You don't need anyone to tell you what you're worth, son. You've already got it inside you." But Jordan wasn't sure. Sometimes, it was hard to believe in himself when the world didn't always see him the way his family did. But that morning, something changed. For the first time in his life, someone had stopped, and it wasn't just any person. It was him, the man who changed the world with his ideas, who built rockets and cars, who had everything the world could offer. Yet, it was Jordan's voice that left him speechless. What would this encounter mean for Jordan's future? Only time would tell, but for now, Jordan couldn't help but wonder. Could this be the moment that would finally give his voice the recognition it deserved? The morning after Jordan's street performance, the city had returned to its usual rhythm. The rush of traffic, the honking horns, the endless flow of people, rushing to their destinations, too busy to notice the subtle moments that slipped by unnoticed. But for Jordan, yesterday's event hadn't just been a fleeting moment. It was something that changed everything. He was sitting in his room, his feet dangling off the edge of his bed, staring out the window at the street below. His heart was still racing from the moment he had sung on that street corner. It was the most exhilarating thing he'd ever done, but also the most terrifying. What if no one cared? What if he never saw those people again? But it wasn't just the performance that was playing in his mind. It was him, the man who had stopped, the one who had watched in silence. Elon Musk. Jordan had never imagined that someone like him would even notice him. Sure, his mom talked about Elon all the time. "He's a genius," she'd say. "He's changing the world." But that was always in the context of rockets, electric cars, and the future. Nothing about someone like Jordan. The thought that someone so important could be moved by his singing felt unreal, almost like a dream. That night, as Jordan was lying in bed, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached for it, groggy from just waking up, and saw an alert from a news app. Elon Musk. A life-changing moment. How a street singer stunned the tech billionaire. The headline made his heart skip a beat. No way. He clicked on the link, his eyes growing wider as he read the article. The piece was brief but powerful. It mentioned how Elon Musk, while on his way to a meeting, had paused in his car to listen to a young boy with Down syndrome singing on a street corner. The article spoke about how Musk had been visibly moved and had even rolled down the window to hear more clearly, though he hadn't made himself known to the boy. It didn't say much about the boy himself, But the headline and the small blurb about the encounter were enough to get Jordan's pulse racing. The article made it clear that there were now whispers, rumors swirling around the city, in the tech world, and even among his mother's friends. Was Elon Musk interested in the boy who had captured his attention? Would something come of this brief interaction? For a split second, Jordan's mind flashed with all kinds of possibilities. Maybe this was his chance to make it big. Maybe this was the moment that would change everything. But that hope was quickly clouded by another feeling, fear. What if the attention turned out to be too much? What if the world wasn't ready for him? It was a terrifying thought, one that kept him up late into the night, tossing and turning. In one sense, he knew his voice had power. But the world didn't always know what to do with people like him. They saw the condition, the label, and not the person. What if this brought only trouble? The next day at school, the buzz of the article was everywhere. Jordan couldn't walk through the halls without someone whispering his name or giving him a curious glance. Some of the kids were even talking about him in the cafeteria, and though they seemed intrigued, he could tell that many didn't know what to make of it. It felt weird. All of it. People weren't asking about his music. They were asking about Elon Musk. What did he think of him? Did Jordan think something would come from this encounter? How did he feel about the attention? The questions overwhelmed him. For the first time in a long while, Jordan didn't know how to answer. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not for something so unexpected. The crowd around him was curious, eager to know more, but none of them saw him the way his family did. They only saw the boy who had caught the eye of someone famous. It was during lunch that Jordan saw her, the girl who had always been kind to him. Her name was Emily. She had sat with him during class when no one else would. She didn't ask questions or make a big deal out of his differences. She just treated him like anyone else. He smiled at her as she walked toward his table, but she looked uneasy, glancing around before sitting down. "Hey, Jay," she said, offering a small smile. "How's it going?" "I'm good," Jordan replied, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. "Just, trying to get through the day." Emily nodded, glancing at the phone in her hand. "Everyone's talking about you." "About the article." Jordan swallowed hard. "Yeah, it's a lot. I didn't think it would blow up like this." She hesitated, then leaned in closer. "Are you okay? You look kind of freaked out." Jordan glanced around the cafeteria, where people were whispering and pointing. He felt like a fish in a glass bowl. It was uncomfortable, the attention. He wanted to scream, to tell everyone to just leave him alone. "I don't know," he said softly, feeling the weight of the words. It's just a lot. What if they don't really care? What if this is just a joke to them?" Emily gave him a reassuring smile, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're not a joke, Jay. People see you, and they see your talent. They just don't know how to react to it." But Jordan wasn't so sure. There was a part of him that felt invisible again, like the whole world was just looking at him through a lens that didn't quite see him as he really was. As the school bell rang and the crowd began to disperse, Jordan gathered his things and left the cafeteria, lost in thought. What would happen if Elon Musk actually reached out to him? Was he ready for what might come next? And more importantly, was the world ready for him? What would you do in Jordan's shoes? Would you embrace the attention, or would you run from it? How would you handle the sudden spotlight? The days following the viral news article were a whirlwind for Jordan. What had started as a single, fleeting moment on a street corner had somehow spiraled into a media frenzy. Every day, more news outlets picked up the story. Jordan didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew it was big. Everywhere he went, people recognized him, even if only for a split second. Some of them waved, some gave him curious glances, and some asked him questions that made his head spin. The reality of being in the spotlight hit him all at once, and it wasn't as glamorous as he had imagined. The attention was overwhelming. At school, he could hardly focus on anything else as the whispers and stares followed him down every hall. Emily, the only person who seemed to see him for who he truly was, kept reassuring him. "It's okay, Jay. You've got this," she would say whenever he felt like his world was spiraling out of control. But it wasn't just the school that was buzzing. His phone, which had once only ever lit up with notifications from family members and friends, was now flooded with messages. Some were from strangers, people who had seen the video of him singing online. There were offers of interviews, sponsorships, and even requests to meet with famous producers and music labels. For a moment, Jordan's mind raced with all the possibilities. Could this be the break he had always dreamed of? But the strangest and most unexpected thing happened on the third day after the article was published. Jordan was walking home from school, the weight of the world still hanging heavily on his shoulders, when a sleek black SUV pulled up beside him. The driver, a tall, well-dressed man with sharp features, rolled down the window and flashed a smile. "Are you Jordan?" the man asked, his voice warm yet strangely formal. Jordan stopped in his tracks, feeling a lump form in his throat. He didn't recognize the man, but he had the feeling that this was no ordinary encounter. "Yeah, I'm Jordan. Who are you?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned over and pulled out a sleek envelope from the passenger seat. "This is for you," he said, handing it to Jordan. "Elon Musk wants to meet you." Jordan's heart skipped a beat. The words didn't fully register. Elon Musk wants to meet me? His mind raced. It was too surreal to be true. He looked at the envelope, his hands trembling as he held it. It was embossed with a logo he recognized from one of Musk's companies. "Wait, Elon Musk? The Elon Musk?" Jordan stammered, still trying to process the situation. The man smiled again, nodding. "Yes, he saw your performance, and he'd like to meet with you. Please open the letter when you're ready." As the man drove off, the SUV disappearing around the corner, Jordan stood frozen in the middle of the sidewalk. He looked at the envelope in his hand, feeling like he was holding the key to a completely different world, a world he had never imagined he could step into. His thoughts raced. What was this meeting about? Was it for real? Why him? Back at home, Jordan found his mom in the kitchen, humming to herself as she stirred a pot of soup. The house smelled of her signature homemade cooking, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But Jordan's heart was still pounding, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Mom, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice shaking. Clara turned from the stove, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's going on, Jay?" Jordan opened the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out a sleek, white letter. It was written in elegant, flowing script, much more formal than anything he had ever seen. "Dear Jordan, I had the privilege of hearing your performance, and I was moved by your talent. You have something special, and I believe the world deserves to see and hear you. I would like to meet with you and discuss how we can make that happen. Please come to my office at SpaceX headquarters tomorrow at 2 p.m. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Elon Musk." Clara read the letter over Jordan's shoulder, her eyes widening in disbelief. Is this for real?" she whispered. Jordan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. "It has to be. This is everything I've ever wanted. But, Mom, what if I'm not ready? What if I mess it up?" Clara turned him toward her, her hands gentle on his shoulders. "Jay, I know you're scared, but you've got something that no one else has. You have your voice, your heart. Don't let fear stop you from doing something amazing." The next few hours felt like a blur. Clara helped him pick out something nice to wear, though Jordan didn't feel like any outfit could make him feel ready for a meeting with someone as powerful as Elon Musk. The entire time, he couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. What if this is a mistake? He thought. What if I fail? The next day, as they drove to the SpaceX headquarters, Jordan could feel his nerves growing. The massive building loomed ahead, far bigger than anything he had ever seen. Clara kept reassuring him, but even she couldn't mask the anxiety in her voice. This was no ordinary meeting. This was a life-altering moment. When they arrived, a security guard greeted them and led them to an elevator that went up into the heart of SpaceX's headquarters. Every step felt like a countdown to something huge. And then, as the doors opened on the top floor, there he was. Elon Musk, the man who had changed the world. The man who had changed everything for Jordan. "Welcome, Jordan," Elon said with a warm smile, extending his hand. "I'm glad you could make it." And just like that, Jordan's world shifted. What do you think Jordan should do in this moment? Should he embrace the opportunity and take a leap of faith, or should he hesitate, unsure of where this journey could lead him? Jordan's heart raced as he followed the security guard through the sleek, high-tech corridors of SpaceX headquarters. Every step felt surreal. He had always imagined what it would be like to meet someone as famous as Elon Musk, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of standing face-to-face with the man who had revolutionized technology and space exploration. As the elevator doors opened to a large, modern office, Elon Musk stood up from behind his desk, offering a warm, friendly smile that put Jordan a little at ease. "Jordan, it's a pleasure to meet you in person," Elon said, his voice calm and reassuring. He extended his hand, and Jordan, still in awe, shook it. The room was lined with futuristic technology, and there was a model of a SpaceX rocket on one side. But none of that seemed to matter. All Jordan could focus on was the man in front of him, the person who had heard his music and was now standing in front of him, speaking to him as though he were just another person. Elon motioned to a chair across from him. "Please sit. I'm so glad you came. I've been following your story, and I have to say, I'm impressed by your talent. Your performance on the street was incredible." Jordan took a seat, still trying to process everything. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft rustle of papers on Elon's desk. Jordan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the moment that could change everything. "What made you decide to sing on the street?" Elon asked, leaning forward slightly. Jordan hesitated, unsure of how to answer. It was hard to explain why he had done it, why he had risked everything for something so spontaneous. "I don't really know," he said quietly. "I just felt like I had to do it. I wanted to show people who I am, even if they don't understand me." Elon nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving Jordan's. "I get it," he said. "Sometimes the world can feel like it's not ready for people like you. But you've got something special, something that the world needs. You shouldn't hide that." Jordan's chest swelled at the compliment, but the words also felt heavy. It was one thing to hear it from his mom or Emily, but hearing it from someone like Elon Musk? It felt like a dream, but also like a weight he wasn't sure he was ready to carry. Elon leaned back in his chair, looking at Jordan with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "I've been thinking a lot about what we could do together. Your music is powerful, and you have a unique voice. I think you have the potential to change lives." Jordan's heart fluttered in his chest. Change lives? He had always dreamed of being a singer, of sharing his voice with the world. But the idea that he could actually make a difference, that was something else entirely. But then, just as quickly, a thought crossed his mind. He wasn't just a boy with a beautiful voice. He was also someone with Down syndrome. He knew that some people might only see that. They might not see the boy who loved to sing, or the person who dreamed of changing the world. They might only see the disability, the label. "What if people don't take me seriously?" Jordan blurted out, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if they just see my condition and not who I am?" Elon's expression softened, and for the first time, he leaned forward, speaking with a calm intensity. "That's a fair question, Jordan. The truth is, some people will always focus on labels. They'll try to define you by things that don't matter. But I'm not one of those people, and I don't think you should be either." He paused, allowing Jordan to process the words. "What matters is the music you make, the message you send. You're more than just the sum of your parts. You're an artist, and that's what people should see." Jordan swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to overwhelm him. His throat tightened, and the weight of Elon's words settled deep inside him. Could it be true? Could he really be more than what the world thought of him? More than just the boy with Down syndrome who loved to sing? Before Jordan could say anything more, Elon stood up, walking over to a table where a set of headphones and a microphone were set up. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen a few times. "We've got a team here that specializes in creating new music experiences. They've worked with some of the biggest artists in the world, and I want you to meet them." Jordan's eyes widened as Elon motioned for him to follow. As they walked down the hallway, the moment felt like a dream. The people he passed didn't seem to notice him at first. They were too busy working, too absorbed in their own tasks. But then, a few of them glanced up and smiled, recognizing who he was. The feeling of being seen, really seen, was new and unfamiliar. Finally, they reached a recording studio at the end of the hall, where a team of technicians were setting up. Elon waved to them and introduced Jordan to the team. "This is Jordan," Elon said. "He's got something special, and I think you're going to want to hear him." Jordan's pulse raced. The studio was nothing like he had imagined. It was sleek, modern, with walls lined with sound equipment and monitors. But more than that, it was filled with possibility. He could feel it in the air. The energy in the room was electric. A technician handed Jordan a microphone, and Elon signaled for him to begin. Jordan, though terrified, felt a sense of calm wash over him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The song was one of his favorites, a ballad his mom used to sing to him when he was younger. As the notes left his lips, he could feel something shift in the room. The technicians stopped what they were doing, and even Elon took a step back, listening intently. For a brief moment, everything felt right. When he finished, there was a long silence. Then, Elon smiled. "You've got a gift, Jordan. I knew it the moment I heard you." But just as Jordan began to let himself believe that this could be real, there was a sudden shift in the room. A man in a suit, someone Jordan hadn't noticed before, cleared his throat. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the man said, his voice sharp, "but I need to address something important." The room fell silent again as all eyes turned to the man. Jordan's heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" Elon glanced at the man, his expression unreadable. "What's the issue, Rick?" Rick's gaze didn't leave Jordan. "There's been a change of plans. We're going to need to reassess how we move forward with this project. There are some concerns about public reception." Jordan's stomach sank. Public reception? What did that even mean? Was the world not ready for him after all? Elon's voice broke through the tension. "We'll figure it out. Jordan has talent, and we'll make sure the world sees it." But the unease in the room lingered, and Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. What do you think Jordan should do now? Should he fight for his place in the world, or should he walk away and preserve what he has? The tension in the studio was palpable. Jordan stood there, still gripping the microphone, his mind racing. The words "public reception" echoed in his mind, over and over. What did that mean for him? Was this all just a game to them? He had finally made it to this moment, only to find that it wasn't as simple as he had hoped. The room had gone silent, and even though everyone's eyes were on him, Jordan felt more alone than ever. The man in the suit, Rick, as Elon had called him, looked at Jordan with a calculated, almost dismissive gaze. Jordan didn't understand what was happening. He had just sung his heart out, and this was supposed to be the moment of his big break. But instead, the room felt like it was closing in on him. Elon, sensing the tension, took a step forward, placing a reassuring hand on Jordan's shoulder. "Rick, I understand your concerns, but let's not jump to conclusions," Elon said, his tone calm yet firm. "We're talking about something special here, something real. Let's give this a chance." Rick, however, didn't look convinced. He crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. "The problem is, Elon, that the audience might not be ready for someone like him. People can be cruel, especially when it comes to disabilities. And you know that better than anyone." Jordan's heart sank even further. Disabilities? He had known that some people saw him differently, but to hear it so bluntly stung. He felt a lump form in his throat, but he refused to let it show. He wasn't going to let them define him. Not now, not ever. He looked up at Elon, his voice steady despite the storm swirling inside him. "I've worked my whole life to be seen for who I am," Jordan said, his words coming out stronger than he felt. "Not for my condition, for my voice, for what I can do. I'm not going to let anyone tell me that I don't belong here." There was a long pause as everyone in the room absorbed Jordan's words. Elon's eyes flickered with approval, but Rick's expression remained unchanged. "Elon," Rick said, his voice clipped, "I'm just being realistic here. If we move forward with this, we have to be prepared for backlash. People might not be as supportive as you think." Jordan's chest tightened. He had heard all of that before. The whispers, the doubts, the moments when people questioned his abilities. He had spent his entire life proving people wrong, and he wasn't about to stop now. He turned to Rick, his voice steady and unwavering. "I don't care about the backlash. I care about the music. I care about the message. If you're not ready to take a chance on that, then maybe this isn't the right place for me. The room fell into an awkward silence. Jordan's words had struck a chord, and for the first time, Rick seemed to hesitate. Elon, however, didn't miss a beat. He smiled and placed a hand on Jordan's back. "You're right, Jordan. And I think you've just proven to all of us that you have what it takes. Rick, we're moving forward with this. I'm not backing down, and neither is Jordan." Rick stared at Elon for a long moment, as though weighing his options. Then, with a resigned sigh, he turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Elon turned back to Jordan, his expression a mix of admiration and determination. "That was incredibly brave," Elon said, his voice full of respect. "You stood your ground, and that's not something you see every day. I'm proud of you." Jordan felt a wave of relief wash over him, though the weight of the moment still lingered. "I'm not doing this for anyone else," Jordan replied, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm doing it for me, for my future, for the people who believe in me." Elon smiled, clearly impressed by Jordan's conviction. "And that's exactly why I believe in you, too. You've got the heart of a true artist." Before they could say anything more, the door opened again, and a woman in a smart blazer walked in. She had an air of confidence about her, and Jordan immediately recognized her as someone important. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, giving a quick nod to Elon. "But we've got some updates on the press conference. We'll need to start preparing for the announcement soon." Elon nodded, then turned back to Jordan. "I'll be right there. But before we go, I want to make sure you understand one thing." Jordan looked up at him, eager to hear what Elon had to say next. "You've just taken your first big step towards something incredible, but it's not going to be easy. There will be people who don't get it, who will try to bring you down. But the only thing that matters is what you believe, what you know in your heart." Jordan nodded, his resolve strengthening with each word. "I understand." Elon smiled. "Good. Because we're going to do this together. You're not alone in this journey." Jordan's heart swelled with a new sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he was ready for them. He would prove to the world that he was more than just a label. He was an artist. As he left the studio with Elon, a new sense of hope burned within him. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let anyone tell him that he couldn't make a difference. He had a voice, and it was time for the world to hear it. How do you think Jordan will handle the challenges ahead? Will he continue to fight for his place in the world, or will doubts start to creep in? What could this journey mean for him and others who face similar struggles? The next few days passed in a whirlwind. Jordan's mind was still reeling from his conversation with Elon Musk, the press conference, and the unexpected attention his impromptu performance had garnered. The decision to move forward with his music, despite the challenges, felt like a dream come true. But it also came with a new set of pressures he wasn't sure how to handle. He hadn't expected things to move so quickly. One moment, he was just a boy singing on the street for a few dollars, and the chance to feel seen. The next, he was in the heart of Silicon Valley, discussing contracts and potential collaborations with some of the most influential people in the music industry. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. The quiet streets he used to wander, unnoticed, had now become filled with eyes following him. As he walked through the parking lot of SpaceX headquarters, he felt the weight of the stairs. Some were filled with admiration, others with skepticism. It was a strange feeling, being in the spotlight but not entirely sure if he was ready for it. But it was too late to back out now. Jordan had already made his choice, and there was no turning back. The press conference was fast approaching, and Elon had made it clear that Jordan would be front and center. The anticipation was palpable. It was the morning of the conference, and Jordan stood in front of a mirror in the dressing room of SpaceX, adjusting his shirt nervously. His reflection stared back at him, and for a brief moment, he felt like a different person. The boy who had just a few months ago been nervous about singing in public was now about to share his voice with the world. The boy who had spent so much of his life fighting for acceptance was now in a position where the whole world was about to watch him fight for his dreams. There was a knock at the door. Jordan's heart skipped a beat. It was time. "Jordan, are you ready?" Elon's voice came from the other side. Jordan nodded, even though he didn't feel ready. He wasn't sure if anyone ever truly felt ready for a moment like this, but he couldn't let that stop him. He had a message to share, a story to tell, and a voice that deserved to be heard. He opened the door to find Elon standing there, looking as calm and composed as always. Elon's presence was reassuring, like a steady anchor in a storm. "You look great," Elon said with a smile. "We've got a big day ahead of us, but just remember, this is your moment. Own it." Jordan took a deep breath. He felt a little nervous, but more than anything, he felt something else. A sense of purpose. A desire to show the world who he really was, not just as a boy with Down syndrome, but as an artist with something to say. As they made their way to the stage, Jordan's thoughts raced. There were so many questions he wanted to ask. Would people understand his music? Would they accept him for who he was? Or would the critics come out in full force, tearing apart every note and every lyric? When they reached the stage, the lights were blinding, and the cameras flashed in every direction. The room was filled with reporters, influencers, and a sea of faces all focused on him. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he took his place in front of the microphone. Elon stepped beside him, looking out at the crowd with a steady gaze. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, his voice carrying easily through the microphone. "Today, we're here to witness something incredible. A young artist who has shown the world that talent knows no boundaries. Please welcome Jordan." The applause that followed was deafening, and for a moment, Jordan felt as though he couldn't breathe. But then, something amazing happened. As the crowd clapped and cheered, he realized that they weren't just clapping for the idea of him. They were clapping for him, the real him, the boy who had worked so hard to get to this point, the boy with a dream that refused to die. Jordan stepped up to the mic, his hands trembling but his voice steady. He had prepared for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare him for the emotional flood that hit him all at once. The crowd was expecting something, but what were they expecting from him? He took a deep breath and started to sing. The first few notes were shaky, but as he continued, his confidence grew. The words flowed from him, each lyric a reflection of everything he had felt over the years, the loneliness, the struggle, but also the hope and the belief that he could overcome anything. The crowd fell silent, hanging on every note. When the song ended, there was a brief, heavy silence. Jordan felt his heart race as he waited for the crowd's reaction. Was it good? Did they like it? And then, as if a switch had been flipped, the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of support that crashed over him, and for the first time in his life, Jordan felt truly seen. He wasn't just a boy with Down syndrome anymore. He was an artist. He was Jordan, and he was here to stay. As the applause died down, Elon stepped forward, clapping loudly and smiling. "That was incredible, Jordan," he said. "You've got something that no one else has. You've just taken the first step towards something amazing, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of this journey with you." Jordan's heart swelled with pride, but there was still so much uncertainty ahead. He had no idea what would come next, what challenges he would face, or how the world would react. But in that moment, none of that mattered. He had shared his voice with the world, and they had heard him. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who had never believed in him, but were now starting to see him for who he truly was. He had made it. But as the conference came to a close and the journalists began to approach for interviews, Jordan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead. The world wasn't always kind to people who were different, and he knew there would be critics. But Jordan wasn't afraid. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to let anything stop him now. How do you think Jordan will handle the attention after his performance? Will the newfound recognition change him, or will he stay true to himself? What challenges might he face next? The applause from the press conference had barely faded when the first wave of criticism began. It wasn't unexpected. Jordan had known that not everyone would embrace his message. But still, the sting of the negative comments cut deeper than he had anticipated. The internet, once a platform of support, quickly became a battleground. Headlines read, "Can a boy with Down syndrome really be the next big music star?" And Elon Musk's latest venture, exploiting a disabled boy for publicity? Jordan had never seen the internet so full of hate before. It was one thing to deal with it in passing, from strangers on the street or classmates in school. But seeing it on his phone screen, hearing it from journalists, it was a new level of pain. It felt like everything he had worked for was being called into question. He was scrolling through his social media feed when he saw a post that made his stomach drop. Just because you can sing doesn't mean you should. We don't need more pity projects. Jordan stared at the screen for a long moment, his heart sinking with each word. He knew he couldn't let it get to him, but how could he not? His entire life had been about proving he was more than his diagnosis. And now it felt like the world was once again telling him that he wasn't enough. Elon's playing with fire, one article claimed. This is just a stunt to get publicity. He's using a vulnerable kid to make headlines. It hurt to read. To see people questioning Elon's intentions when Jordan knew how much Elon believed in him, how much he had invested in his future. Elon had always treated him like a partner, someone with valuable potential. But it was clear now that others didn't see it that way. As he sat on the couch in his small apartment, Jordan felt overwhelmed. His phone kept buzzing with notifications, more articles, more comments, all of them questioning his worth, his talent, his place in this industry. He turned to his mom, who had been sitting quietly beside him. Her eyes were filled with concern, but she didn't say anything right away. She knew how much this hurt him. I thought it would be different, Jordan muttered, his voice low. I thought they would see me for who I really am. His mom reached out and placed a comforting hand on his. Sweetheart, they don't know you. Not like I do. Not like the people who care about you do. And sometimes people don't see the good in others right away. But that doesn't mean it's not there. And it doesn't mean you stop fighting for your dream. Jordan nodded slowly, trying to believe her words. But the weight of the online hate was too much to ignore. It felt suffocating. The pressure to prove himself, to keep pushing forward despite the backlash. It was all beginning to feel like too much. Maybe they're right, he whispered, more to himself than to his mom. Maybe I don't belong in this world. Maybe I should just give up. His mom's eyes widened in disbelief. Jordan, no. You've come so far already. Don't let the noise drown out what you know is true. You are worth this. You are worth every step of the journey, even the hard ones. But even as his mom spoke those encouraging words, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The world he was now part of, the music industry, the media, the spotlight, wasn't as kind as he had imagined. The scrutiny, the pressure, it was all beginning to take its toll. The next day, Elon called. The sound of his voice brought some comfort, but Jordan could tell that Elon was dealing with his own set of challenges as well. I know it's been hard, Jordan, Elon said, and I want you to know that I've got your back, no matter what. The media can be brutal, but we're in this together. This is your moment, and I believe in you. But I'm also here for you, through all the tough times. You don't have to do this alone. Jordan felt a small sense of relief, hearing those words from Elon. But still, the weight of the negativity lingered. Why do they have to be so mean? Jordan asked, his voice quiet and defeated. Why can't they just let me be me? Elon paused for a moment before responding. Because, Jordan, the world isn't always fair. People are afraid of what they don't understand. But that's where you come in. You're showing them a different side of the world, a side they've been too afraid to see. You're challenging what they believe is possible. And that's powerful. Don't let their fear become yours. Jordan took a deep breath. Elon was right. The critics and the trolls, they didn't define him. He could either give in to the hate or keep moving forward, no matter how hard it got. I don't want to give up, Jordan said finally, his voice steadier now. I've worked too hard for this. I want to show them all. I'm not going anywhere. Elon's tone softened, and Jordan could almost hear the smile in his voice. That's what I like to hear. And I'll be right here with you, every step of the way. As Jordan ended the call and set his phone aside, he felt a surge of determination rising within him. Yes, the world was cruel at times. But that didn't mean he was going to let it stop him. He would fight for his place, for his dream, for his voice. He had come this far, and nothing would make him back down now. What do you think Jordan will do next in the face of this backlash? Will he rise above the hate, or will the pressure get to him? How can he use this difficult moment to fuel his drive? The days following the intense backlash were a blur. Every time Jordan opened his social media feed, he was greeted with a new wave of negativity. Articles with titles like "Why Jordan Shouldn't Be Famous" and "The Problem with Using Disabled People for Entertainment" seemed to pop up everywhere. It felt like the world had flipped on him, turning from admiration to judgment in the blink of an eye. But Jordan wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. Despite the noise, he still had a fire inside him that wouldn't go out. Elon's words echoed in his mind, "Don't let their fear become yours." He had to hold on to that. He had to remember why he was doing this in the first place. He wasn't just trying to prove people wrong. He was trying to share his music, his truth, with the world. That was worth fighting for. It was a rainy afternoon when Jordan found himself sitting at the piano in his living room, fingers hovering above the keys. The quiet hum of the rain against the window created a calming atmosphere, but inside, Jordan was anything but calm. The weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders, and he knew that if he was going to move forward, he had to take control of his own narrative. He couldn't let the critics dictate his story. He started playing. At first, it was just a few random chords, the sound of his fingers searching for something, anything, that would bring him peace. But slowly, something began to form. A melody, soft and gentle, like a prayer. Jordan closed his eyes and let the music flow. It was the one place where he felt truly free. The one place where he could be completely himself, without worrying about what others thought. As he played, a new sense of determination grew within him. He wasn't just going to let the world tear him down. He had something to say, and he would find a way to make them listen. The critics might never understand, but the people who mattered would. He would create music that spoke to the heart, that showed the world his journey and how far he had come. He had to stay true to himself. The next day, Jordan went into the studio with Elon. It was time to take action. "Are you ready?" Elon asked, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of excitement. The studio was buzzing with energy, and Jordan could feel the electric atmosphere in the air. Jordan nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." As they entered the soundproof room, the weight of the decision ahead of him settled in. This wasn't just about making music anymore. This was about making a statement. He was going to create something that reflected his journey, his struggles, his triumphs, and his unshakable belief in himself. For hours, Jordan worked tirelessly in the studio. The music poured out of him, each note capturing a different emotion he had felt over the past few weeks. The anger at the critics, the sadness of being misunderstood, but also the hope, the resilience that had always driven him. "Elon, I need to say something in this song," Jordan said, pausing for a moment. "I need people to understand me. I need them to understand what it's like to be different, to feel like you don't belong, but then find the strength to keep going." Elon looked at him, his eyes full of understanding. "You've got it, Jordan. This is your truth. Let it out." And so, Jordan did. He sang with everything he had, pouring his heart into the song. Each lyric was a declaration. "I am here. I am not going anywhere. I am worthy of this space, this moment, this dream." When they finished recording, Elon sat back, a proud smile on his face. "That was incredible," he said. "You've just captured something real, something that will resonate with people. They may not all get it, but the ones who do, they're going to feel it." Jordan couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in a while, he felt like he was on the right path. This wasn't about proving anything to the haters. It was about staying true to who he was. The critics could say whatever they wanted, but Jordan was done letting their fear define him. Later that week, the song was released. It was a raw, emotional track that spoke to the pain of rejection and the power of perseverance. The response was immediate, but it wasn't what Jordan had expected. While there were still critics who tried to tear him down, there was also an outpouring of support. Fans from around the world began to share their own stories, how they, too, had faced adversity and learned to rise above it. Messages flooded in, praising Jordan for his authenticity and his courage. For the first time, Jordan realized that his music wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. He wasn't just singing for himself. He was singing for the people who had felt invisible, misunderstood, or left behind. In the midst of it all, Jordan received a message from one of his biggest critics. It was a post from the journalist who had written the most scathing article about him just a few weeks ago. But this time, the tone was different. The message read, "I have to admit, I was wrong. I didn't understand you. But after listening to your music, I see the heart behind it. I see you, and I get it now." Jordan stared at the message, feeling a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Maybe not all of his critics would come around, but this one did. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. He sat back in his chair, looking out the window at the quiet street below. For the first time in a long time, he felt peace. He wasn't fighting the world anymore. He was living his truth, and that was enough. What do you think of Jordan's transformation in this chapter? Do you think this will change his approach to the public's opinion moving forward? How do you think the newfound support will impact him in the next stage of his journey? The buzz around Jordan's music continued to grow, and with it came the pressure. What had started as a passion project, a way for Jordan to express himself and connect with others, was quickly evolving into something much bigger. The song was a hit, and Jordan was suddenly thrust into the spotlight in ways he had never imagined. He was invited to interviews, television shows, and social media events. The world wanted more of Jordan, but the demands of fame came with their own set of challenges. The pressure to keep creating, to keep meeting expectations, started to weigh heavily on him. Elon was there every step of the way, guiding him through the chaos. But even Elon seemed to sense the growing strain in Jordan's eyes. The sparkle that had once been so bright was beginning to dim under the weight of constant demands. One evening, after a long day of interviews and promotional events, Jordan sat alone in his dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His makeup was smudged, his hair mussed from hours under the stage lights. He looked tired, more tired than he had ever felt. The door to the room opened, and Elon stepped in. His face was warm with concern, but there was an underlying understanding in his eyes. "Jordan, I think you need to take a step back," he said gently, walking over to the chair beside him. Jordan didn't look up at first. "I don't have time for a break," he replied, his voice flat. "The world is watching. I can't slow down now." Elon sighed, sitting down across from him. "I get it, but you're only human. You've been through a lot in a short amount of time. This," he gestured around the room, "isn't normal. The attention, the expectations, they can break you if you let them." Jordan looked up at him then, his eyes filled with a mix of frustration and confusion. "What am I supposed to do? Everyone's counting on me. I can't just disappear, can I?" Elon leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "You don't have to disappear, but you do need to find balance. This isn't just about the music or the spotlight. It's about you, your health, your happiness. No one can keep up this pace forever. Not even someone as talented as you." Jordan took a deep breath, processing Elon's words. He knew Elon was right, but the fear of falling behind, of losing momentum, made it hard to admit. The world had given him a chance. He couldn't squander it. He had come so far. But was he sacrificing too much along the way? That night, as Jordan lay in bed, he thought about the past few months. The highs, the lows, the constant whirlwind of activity. It was thrilling, yes, but it was also exhausting. He had been living in a world that was constantly moving, and he had no time to catch his breath. He closed his eyes and tried to relax, but every time he thought he was slowing down, his phone buzzed. Another interview request, another offer, another demand. For the first time, he realized he was losing touch with what mattered most, himself. The next morning, Jordan called his mom. Her voice was a familiar comfort, and as soon as she answered, he let out a long sigh. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," he admitted. "Everything's moving so fast, and I don't feel like I'm in control anymore." His mom's voice softened. "You don't have to do it all at once, Jordan. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's okay to take a break. You're not just a product. You're a person, with needs, with feelings. You have to take care of yourself too." Jordan bit his lip, tears welling up in his eyes. He had been so focused on proving himself that he had forgotten the importance of self-care. He had been chasing after an idea of success without really understanding what it would cost him. That afternoon, Jordan made the difficult decision to slow down. He canceled several upcoming shows and took a break from his usual routine. Instead, he focused on what he needed: time to breathe, time to rest, and time to reconnect with the things that mattered most: his family, his music, and his own well-being. Elon, surprisingly, was supportive of his decision. "It's a smart move, Jordan," he said. "This industry will still be here when you're ready. But you need to be in a good place, mentally and emotionally, to give your best. I'm here for you, no matter what." As the days went by, Jordan found a new sense of peace. He spent more time with his family, reconnected with friends he had lost touch with, and even took long walks in the park, something he hadn't done in months. It was simple, but it was enough. It was the break he needed. But even in the stillness, Jordan didn't lose sight of his dream. He knew that when he was ready, he would return to the stage, to the music, to the fight for his place in the world. But for now, he needed this time to heal. How do you think Jordan's decision to slow down will affect his future career? Do you think this break will help him find a better balance? Or do you think it might set him back? What do you expect from Jordan's next step in his journey? For the first time in months, Jordan woke up without the constant rush of deadlines and expectations looming over him. The studio lights, the interviews, and the endless calls had all faded into the background. In their place, he found peace. He spent his days revisiting old hobbies, painting, reading, and most importantly, spending time with his family. They had always been his rock, and now, more than ever, he felt the need to be close to them. They reminded him of who he was before the fame, before the whirlwind that had swept him away. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jordan sat on the porch of his childhood home, his guitar resting in his lap. His mom was sitting beside him, a cup of tea in hand. The air was cool, the kind of evening that made you want to slow down and savor every moment. "You've been quiet lately," his mom said gently, looking over at him with a soft smile. Jordan strummed a few chords, his fingers finding their rhythm. "I've been thinking a lot," he admitted, "about where I started and where I'm headed. I've learned a lot, but sometimes I feel like I've lost touch with why I started in the first place." His mom nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "It's easy to get caught up in all of it, the fame, the pressure. But your music, your voice, that's what matters most. You're doing this for you, not for anyone else." Jordan paused, letting her words sink in. He had been so focused on pleasing others, on proving himself, that he had forgotten why he loved music in the first place. It was never about the applause or the recognition. It was about expressing himself, connecting with others, and finding the joy in creating something real. That night, he wrote. He wrote with a newfound sense of clarity, pouring his heart into the lyrics. His music became more than just a performance. It became his story, his truth, his soul laid bare for the world to hear. As he worked, he realized something. The pressure to be perfect, to constantly succeed, had been a barrier between him and his true purpose. Now, with that weight lifted, he could finally create freely. A few days later, Jordan got a call from Elon. The conversation was light at first, talking about the latest news and the future of music. But then Elon brought up something more serious. "How are you doing, Jordan? I mean, really doing?" Elon asked, his tone concerned. Jordan hesitated, then let out a long breath. "I'm doing better," he said, his voice steady. "I've taken some time off, and it's been good for me. I've reconnected with my music. And with myself." "That's great to hear," Elon said, his voice warm. "I've been keeping an eye on you, and I can see the change. You're more grounded now. You know what you want, and you're not afraid to take the time to get there. I think it's time to come back." Jordan thought about it for a moment. He wasn't sure he was ready to dive back into the chaos of fame just yet, but he could feel the spark of inspiration within him again. The world wasn't going anywhere, and he wasn't in a rush. But it was time. "I'm ready," Jordan said, the certainty in his voice clear. "I'm ready to make music that's true to me." Elon's voice brightened. "That's exactly what the world needs. You've got something special, Jordan. People are waiting for your next step, and we're going to make sure it's the best one yet." Jordan took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of calm. He didn't have to rush, didn't have to meet anyone else's expectations. He was going to do this on his own terms. He would return to the stage, but this time, it would be for the right reasons. As he put his guitar away that night, He realized that the path ahead would still have its challenges, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He had found his purpose again, and nothing could take that away from him. The next morning, Jordan returned to the studio with a fresh sense of determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this. He was no longer the same person who had stepped into the limelight months ago. He was stronger, wiser, and more connected to himself than ever before. This time, the music would come from a place of truth, not fear. And that was all he needed. How do you think Jordan's break has impacted his music? Do you think his renewed focus on authenticity will change the way people see him? What do you think is next for Jordan as he prepares to return to the stage? It had been weeks since Jordan made the decision to step away from the spotlight, and now, the time had come to return. The music world had been waiting for his next move, and Jordan knew it was time to make his comeback. But this time, it would be different. This time, he would be true to himself. He stood in front of the mirror that morning, his reflection staring back at him. The person he saw was not the same person who had first stepped into the limelight. He looked older, wiser, and perhaps a little more grounded. The nerves that once plagued him now felt like a distant memory. He had faced the hardest part, reconnecting with himself, and now he was ready to share that with the world. The studio was buzzing with activity as Jordan prepared for his first performance since his break. His team had been working behind the scenes to promote his return, and anticipation was building. It was a big night, his first performance at a major concert, a televised event that would be broadcast worldwide. Jordan paced around the backstage area, his mind racing with thoughts of what could go wrong. There were so many eyes on him now, more than ever before. But in the midst of the anxiety, there was a calmness. He had learned to trust himself, to trust his music. He wasn't doing this for anyone but himself. "Elon's here," one of his team members said as they approached. Jordan looked up and saw Elon standing at the door. His face broke into a smile, and he walked over to give Elon a quick hug. "Thanks for being here, man." Elon clapped him on the back. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. "You've got this. Just remember why you're here." Jordan nodded, feeling the weight of those words. It was easy to get lost in the noise, to get distracted by the expectations and the hype. But at the end of the day, this was his journey. And tonight was just one step in a much bigger story. As the lights dimmed and the crowd erupted in cheers, Jordan stood backstage, taking a deep breath. This was it, his moment. He stepped out onto the stage, the applause of the crowd washing over him like a wave. The spotlight felt like a warmth on his face, but he wasn't scared this time. He was ready. The music filled the air, and with each note, Jordan's confidence grew. He sang from a place of truth, from a place of understanding and acceptance. It was as if the music was flowing through him, not as a performance, but as an offering to the world. As the last note echoed into the silence, the crowd erupted into applause. Jordan stood there, taking it all in, his heart pounding. He had done it. He had come back, not as the person the world expected him to be, but as the person he had always been deep down. Backstage, Elon waited for him, a proud smile on his face. "You nailed it," he said. "That was incredible. I told you. You just needed to trust yourself." Jordan grinned, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "I did, and it felt amazing." As they walked to the car, Elon clapped him on the back again. "This is just the beginning. I know it. You've got something real, Jordan. The world's been waiting for you, and now they're going to see the real you." Jordan nodded, feeling the truth of Elon's words. He had made it through the hardest part, the journey back to himself, and now, the music was just the beginning. What do you think Jordan's performance represents for him? How do you think the world will react to this new, authentic version of Jordan? What challenges do you think he will face as he continues his journey? After the performance, Jordan's return to the stage was the talk of the town. News outlets praised his authenticity, and fans flooded his social media with messages of support. His phone never stopped buzzing. Interviews, offers, and requests filled his inbox. The world was watching him, and the pressure of being in the spotlight was heavier than ever. For a while, it felt exhilarating. He was on top of the world, and the attention felt like a validation of all his hard work. But as the days wore on, the excitement began to fade. replaced by the weight of expectations. Every move he made was scrutinized, every word he said analyzed. There were moments when he felt suffocated by the constant pressure to be perfect. He couldn't help but notice the distance growing between him and his family. His mom, who had been his greatest supporter, called less often. His friends, who once shared his dreams, now seemed like distant memories. Even his relationship with Elon had changed. There were fewer phone calls, less casual conversation. The more successful he became, the more isolated he felt. One night, as Jordan sat alone in his hotel room after another round of interviews, he found himself staring at his phone. His mind was racing, his thoughts conflicting. Was this the price of fame? Was it worth it to have the world's admiration, if it meant losing the people who mattered most? Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his mom. "Jordan, I haven't heard from you in a while. I miss you. Let's talk soon." He read the message twice, feeling a pang of guilt. He had promised himself that fame wouldn't change him, but here he was, more distant than ever from the people who had always been there for him. Jordan called her immediately. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry I've been so out of touch. Things have been crazy." "I know, sweetie," she said gently. "I'm proud of you. But you've got to remember to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup." Jordan sighed. "I thought I was doing okay, but now it just feels like I've lost sight of what matters. I've got all this success, but I feel like I'm losing the people I care about." His mom paused. Fame can be a tricky thing. It can make you feel like you're living for everyone else instead of yourself. But don't let it take away the things that matter. Family, friends, your happiness, that's what will keep you grounded. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been so caught up in the world's expectations that he had neglected the people who had always supported him. His mom was right. He needed to find balance. As he hung up the phone, Jordan realized that he had been living in a constant state of flux. The world was demanding more of him, but in doing so, it was taking away the things that made him feel whole. It was time to reclaim his life, to stop being swept away by the tide of fame and success. He needed to reconnect with himself and the people who had been with him from the start. The next day, Jordan made a decision. He would take some time off, not just from performing, but from the noise of fame. He would focus on what mattered most to him: his family, his friends, and his own peace of mind. He had learned that success without connection was empty, and he wasn't willing to trade his soul for fame. Jordan reached out to his team, telling them he needed a break. He would still honor his commitments, but he wasn't going to let the whirlwind of fame consume him. It was time to slow down, to breathe, and to rediscover the simple joys of life that had once brought him happiness. Do you think Jordan made the right choice by stepping back from fame? What do you think he will do to reconnect with his true self? Do you think his relationships with his family and friends can be repaired? It had been a week since Jordan made the decision to step back. The demands of fame had been relentless, but now, for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. He was no longer chasing the next headline or the next performance. He was taking the time to slow down, to breathe, and most importantly, to reconnect with the people who had always been there for him. The first thing he did was call his old friends, those who had been with him before the fame, the ones who knew him for who he truly was, not just as a celebrity. He reached out to Mark, his best friend from high school, and invited him to spend the weekend at his house. "You're really doing this, huh?" Mark asked, his voice filled with surprise when Jordan made the call. "Yeah, I need to," Jordan said. "I've been running too fast, and I'm starting to realize I need to slow down, reconnect with the people who matter." Mark laughed. "Well, if you're serious about it, I'll be there. It's been too long since we had one of our weekends." The weekend they spent together was a welcome reminder of who Jordan used to be, before the fame, before the endless tours and studio sessions. They spent hours talking about old memories, laughing about the things they used to get up to, and simply enjoying each other's company. For the first time in a long while, Jordan felt like himself again, unburdened by expectations. He also spent more time with his family, taking his mom out for coffee and sitting with his dad in the backyard, talking about life. His mom was thrilled to see him so relaxed, and his dad, who had always been a man of few words, told him how proud he was of him, not for the success, but for being a good person. As Jordan sat with his family, he realized how much he had taken them for granted during his rise to fame. He had been so caught up in the whirlwind of his career that he had neglected to nurture the relationships that had shaped him. Now, he was determined to rebuild those bonds. The next step was to confront the emotional distance between him and Elon. Their friendship had always been a strong foundation, but as Jordan's career grew, their connection seemed to falter. They hadn't spoken much in the past few weeks, and Jordan knew that if he was truly going to rebuild his life, he needed to address this. He called Elon late one night, the conversation picking up as if no time had passed. "Hey man, how's it going?" Elon asked. "I've been better," Jordan replied. "I think I've been a little distant, and I wanted to check in with you. We haven't talked much lately, and I just wanted to make sure everything's good between us." Elon's voice softened. "Of course, Jordan. I get it. You've been going through a lot, and I respect that. We both know how demanding this industry can be. But if I'm being honest, I've been worried about you. You've been burning the candle at both ends, and I want you to be happy, not just successful." Jordan paused. "I've been so focused on everything, work, performing, the next big thing, that I lost sight of what really matters. I've been meaning to call you sooner. I got caught up in it all." Elon chuckled. "You're not the first to do that, and you won't be the last. But I'm glad you're realizing it now. Success means nothing if you're not happy. You've got to live life on your terms, Jordan. That's when the real success happens." They both fell into a comfortable silence, the weight of the conversation settling between them. "I appreciate you, man," Jordan said, finally feeling the release of the tension that had built up between them. "Let's not let this distance grow anymore. You're important to me." "I feel the same way," Elon responded. "We're in this together, man. Let's make sure we don't lose touch again." From that moment, Jordan knew he had made the right choice. He was rebuilding, not just his career, but his life. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to take it one step at a time. He had learned the importance of balance, of surrounding himself with those who loved him, and of staying true to himself in the face of fame's temptations. As the days went by, Jordan continued to find joy in the little things. Morning walks, quiet dinners with family, and late-night talks with friends. His focus shifted from the world's expectations to what truly made him happy. It wasn't about the applause anymore. It was about the connections he had, the love he shared, and the music that flowed from his heart. How do you think this new sense of balance will affect Jordan's career moving forward? Do you think he can maintain this healthier approach to fame? What do you think the future holds for his relationships with Elon and his family? Jordan woke up to a crisp morning, the sun casting long shadows across his living room. It had been months since he had made the decision to step back from the chaotic pace of his career, and he was finally starting to feel at peace with his choices. The whirlwind of fame still lingered in the background, but Jordan had learned how to manage it, how to carve out time for the things that truly mattered. He had spent the last few weeks in deep reflection, exploring what his role in the world could be beyond the music. Jordan's passion for performing had never dimmed, but he now saw his platform as something bigger, something that could make a real impact. The question that kept coming to him was, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? It wasn't enough to just entertain anymore. Jordan had always believed that art could change lives, but now he wanted his music to do more than just make people dance or sing along. He wanted it to heal, inspire, and give voice to those who felt unheard. He knew that his story of overcoming adversity and finding balance could resonate with millions, and that realization sparked a new fire within him. One afternoon, as Jordan was sitting in his studio, he called up his manager, Lisa. He had an idea, a big one. "Lisa," he said, pacing back and forth, "I've been thinking a lot about what I want my next album to be about. I want it to tell the story of my journey, not just the highs, but the struggles too. I want it to be real, raw, and honest. I want to show people that it's okay to struggle, that it's okay to step back and find your way." Lisa listened intently. "I love it, Jordan. That sounds like a powerful message. What's the concept going to be?" "It's going to be about resilience," Jordan continued. "About rising from the ashes, about finding light even when everything feels dark. I want to write songs that touch on mental health, self-acceptance, and the importance of staying true to yourself. I want to use my music to spark conversations, to break down the stigmas around things like mental health and self-worth. We can't just keep pretending everything's perfect all the time. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke up, her voice full of admiration. You've always had a way with words, Jordan, but this feels different. It's like you're not just creating for the sake of it, but for something bigger. I'm on board. Let's make this happen. Jordan felt a sense of relief wash over him. This was the kind of project he had always dreamed of, one that had meaning, one that could bring people together. He wasn't just making music for himself anymore. He was creating art that could potentially change lives. The first step in bringing his vision to life was reaching out to a few mental health organizations and activists. Jordan had always been passionate about mental health, but now, he wanted to do something tangible. He wanted his album to spark a movement. He scheduled a meeting with the CEO of a prominent nonprofit that advocated for mental health awareness, hoping to collaborate on a project that could raise funds and bring attention to the cause. The meeting was a turning point for Jordan. As he spoke to the CEO, he realized just how much work there was still to be done. Mental health was still a taboo topic in many circles, and there were so many people suffering in silence. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to use his platform to amplify these voices. As the conversation came to a close, the CEO looked at Jordan and smiled. You've got the power to make a difference, Jordan. If anyone can help break the stigma, it's you. Let's do this together. Jordan left the meeting feeling more determined than ever. This wasn't just about his music anymore. This was about making a real impact in the world, about using his success to shed light on the issues that mattered most. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was on the right path. Over the next few weeks, Jordan immersed himself in writing the album. He poured his heart and soul into every lyric, every note. The songs were an exploration of his own struggles, his journey with mental health, his battle to find self-acceptance, and the moments when he felt completely lost. But they were also about hope. Each track was a reminder that no matter how dark the night, the sun would rise again. He worked closely with a diverse group of producers, songwriters, and collaborators, all of whom brought their own unique perspective to the project. Together, they crafted a sound that was a fusion of genres, an eclectic mix of soulful ballads, upbeat anthems, and introspective tracks. As the album neared completion, Jordan knew that this was his most personal project yet. It was a reflection of who he had become, a man who had faced his demons, who had learned to embrace his flaws, and who was ready to help others do the same. The day the album was finally finished, Jordan stood in the studio, listening to the final track. His heart swelled with emotion. This album wasn't just a collection of songs. It was a declaration. It was a message to the world that it was okay to not be okay, and that there was always hope. He reached out to his team to start planning the release. But this time, it wouldn't just be a typical album drop. Jordan was determined to use this moment to make a difference. He would partner with mental health organizations, donate proceeds to causes that supported mental well-being, and hold an event to raise awareness. Do you think Jordan's new approach to fame and his music will resonate with his audience? How do you feel about his decision to tackle mental health issues in his work? What impact do you think his album will have on his career and personal life moving forward? The days leading up to the release of Jordan's new album were filled with anticipation, not just for him, but for everyone who had been part of this journey. This wasn't just another project. It was his heart and soul laid bare, his mission to make a difference woven into every note and lyric. Jordan had always known that music had the power to connect people, but this was different. This album had the potential to open doors, to spark conversations, and to start a movement. Every morning, he woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He no longer feared the expectations of the world. He welcomed the responsibility of using his voice for good. His social media pages were buzzing with excitement, especially after the teaser he posted. An intimate clip of him talking about his journey through mental health struggles and how he had learned to embrace both his strengths and his flaws. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life reached out, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. Jordan had tapped into something that resonated deeply with his fans. I feel like you're singing my life, One comment read, "This album is going to help so many people who feel like they don't have a voice." Jordan felt a deep sense of gratitude. It was one thing to make music that entertained, but it was another to create something that could actually help people heal. Then, the first single dropped. The song was raw, vulnerable, and powerful, an anthem for anyone who had ever struggled with self-doubt or anxiety. The lyrics spoke about the darkness that sometimes consumes you and the strength required to rise above it. It wasn't an easy listen, but it was an honest one. The music video, which Jordan had directed himself, was simple but impactful, showing images of people in different walks of life, facing their own battles but finding strength in each other. Within hours, the song began climbing the charts, but what really moved Jordan was the response from the fans. Thousands of people shared the video, using hashtags like #RiseAbove and #YouAreNotAlone. The song had struck a chord. He was contacted by mental health organizations who wanted to partner with him for events and campaigns. Jordan agreed to donate a significant portion of the album's proceeds to mental health research and awareness, using his platform to amplify these causes. One evening, as Jordan was reading through the messages flooding his inbox, he received a text from Elon. "Man, I've been listening to the new song. I have to say, I'm proud of you," Elon wrote. "This is more than music. It's a movement." Jordan smiled, feeling the weight of Elon's words. It meant so much coming from him. Elon had always believed in his potential, but now, it seemed that Jordan was seeing it himself. He was no longer just a performer or a celebrity. He was a person who was using his success to bring about real change. As the album release date approached, Jordan was invited to speak at a mental health summit, an event where some of the most influential people in the industry would gather to discuss how to break the stigma surrounding mental health. The invitation was an honor, and Jordan felt both nervous and excited. This wasn't just a performance. It was a chance to use his voice for something bigger. The day of the summit, Jordan stood backstage, preparing for his speech. His heart raced, but he reminded himself of the importance of what he was about to say. This wasn't about him. It was about the people who had been affected by the struggles he was now talking about. He took a deep breath and walked out onto the stage. The room was filled with influential figures from all walks of life. Actors, musicians, doctors, activists, all gathered to discuss mental health. Jordan stepped up to the podium and looked out over the audience. He saw the expectant faces, the people who had been waiting for someone to say the words they had been too afraid to say themselves. "I used to think that success meant being perfect," Jordan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I thought that to be successful, I had to always be on top of the world, that I couldn't show any weakness. But I was wrong. I've learned that success isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about embracing the struggle and knowing that even when we're broken, we can heal. Even when we feel alone, we're not." He paused for a moment, allowing the words to sink in. "I've been where some of you are. I've struggled with my own mental health. I've questioned my worth and my place in this world. But through it all, I've learned that the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. The bravest thing you can do is take care of your mind, your heart, and your soul. And that's why I'm here today, to tell you that you're not alone and that you matter." The room was silent, and for a brief moment, Jordan felt the weight of the moment. He had done what he set out to do. He had shared his truth, and in doing so, he had started a conversation that could change lives. After the speech, people came up to him, sharing their own stories and expressing their gratitude. Jordan felt a deep sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. This was why he had pursued fame, not for the spotlight, but to use it for something meaningful. That night, as he sat in his hotel room, Jordan reflected on how far he had come. From the boy who had struggled with self-doubt to the man who was now using his platform to make a difference, he realized that his journey was just beginning. How do you think Jordan's newfound purpose will affect his relationships? Do you think he will continue to face challenges as he balances fame with his mission? How will his work inspire others to approach their own mental health struggles? The weeks following Jordan's speech at the Mental Health Summit were a whirlwind of activity. His album was released to critical acclaim, and its success far exceeded anything he could have imagined. His songs were now part of conversations happening across the world, from social media forums to global discussions about mental health. Jordan was now more than a musician. He was an advocate, a voice for those who had struggled in silence. But with all of this attention came new challenges. The very platform he had worked so hard to build for good began to feel overwhelming. As his fanbase grew, so did the expectations. People wanted more of him, more music, more content, more of his thoughts and ideas. The pressure to continue speaking out and making a difference was immense, and it started to wear on him. Jordan had always been passionate about his mission, but as the days went by, he found himself stretched thin. He was constantly on the phone with organizations, scheduling meetings, planning charity events, and performing at benefit concerts. While he was proud of what he was doing, he started to miss the quiet moments, the ones where he could just breathe, where he could focus on himself without the weight of the world on his shoulders. One evening, as he sat in his apartment, going over a list of interviews he had to conduct the next day, Jordan felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Lisa. "Hey, Jordan. I think we need to talk. You're doing amazing things, but I'm worried about you. You're spreading yourself too thin. You need to take a step back before you burn out." Jordan stared at the message for a few moments. Lisa was right. He had been running on empty for weeks. Every time he thought about slowing down, another opportunity would present itself, and he would dive in, determined not to let it pass. But now, he could feel his body telling him it was time to stop. The thought of taking a break seemed impossible. He had worked so hard to get here, so hard to find a purpose beyond the music. But as he looked around his apartment, filled with reminders of everything he had accomplished, Jordan realized that this wasn't just about achieving his goals. It was about maintaining his well-being so that he could continue to help others. He picked up the phone and called Lisa. "You're right," Jordan said as soon as she answered. "I think I need to take a break. Not forever, but just enough to reset. I can't keep going at this pace and still be the person I want to be, both for myself and for the people I'm trying to help." Lisa's voice was filled with relief. "I'm glad you're acknowledging it, Jordan. You've done so much already. It's okay to take some time for yourself. You've earned it." Jordan knew that this wasn't going to be easy. The world was watching, and he had become a symbol of hope for so many. But he also knew that if he didn't take care of himself, he wouldn't be able to continue the work he had set out to do. That night, Jordan made a decision. He would take a few weeks off from public appearances and focus on reconnecting with himself. He would spend time with family, revisit his passion for painting, and just be still for a while. He wasn't abandoning his cause. He was recharging so that he could give even more when the time came. As he spent the next few days in solitude, Jordan found himself rediscovering parts of himself that had been buried under the pressure of fame. He spent long hours in his studio, sketching and painting, his mind free from the constant demands of the outside world. He realized how much he had missed expressing himself in ways that weren't always about his music. One afternoon, Jordan received a call from Elon. "I heard you're taking some time off," Elon said, his tone warm but concerned. "I just wanted to check in. It's important to remember that taking care of yourself is just as important as the work you're doing for others." "I know," Jordan replied, leaning back against the couch. "It's been a lot to juggle lately. I've been so focused on helping others that I forgot to help myself." "You can't pour from an empty cup, Jordan," Elon said. "Sometimes, stepping back is the best way to move forward." Jordan smiled. "I think I'm starting to understand that. Thanks for the reminder, man." Over the next couple of weeks, Jordan allowed himself to slow down. He spent time with his family, reconnecting with the people who had always supported him. He enjoyed quiet mornings with his mother, who reminded him of the importance of balance and self-care. And as he reconnected with his own soul, Jordan realized just how important it was to lead by example, not just by working tirelessly for others, but by showing them that it's okay to take a step back and take care of your own mental health. When he was ready, Jordan returned to the spotlight with a new sense of clarity. He had learned that it wasn't about doing everything. It was about doing the right things, and doing them in a way that nourished his mind, body, and soul. His work would continue, but he would no longer let it consume him. As he prepared for his next charity event, Jordan felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in months. He was ready to face the world again, but this time, he was doing it on his own terms. What do you think about Jordan's decision to take a break? Do you believe taking time for himself will make him a stronger advocate for his cause? How do you think his fans will react to his decision to prioritize self-care? Jordan's return to the public eye was nothing short of triumphant. After taking the time he needed to recharge and reflect, he came back with a clarity and calmness that was evident to everyone around him. His fans, seeing the change in his demeanor, responded with overwhelming support, further solidifying his position as a role model and advocate for mental health. However, the sense of peace he had found was short-lived. With his renewed focus came an increased demand for his time and attention. As Jordan's influence grew, so did the pressure to keep delivering, to keep speaking out, to keep inspiring others. He was no longer just a musician. He was a symbol of hope, and with that came expectations he couldn't always meet. It started with the media. Every interview, every appearance, was scrutinized. Reporters asked the same questions over and over. What's next for you? How do you balance fame with your mission? What advice do you have for people struggling with mental health? Jordan was happy to share his message, but it felt as though the media was more interested in him as an idea rather than a person. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling interview, Jordan found himself alone in his dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His heart was heavy. The constant questioning, the demands to be perfect, he felt like he was being pulled in 1,000 different directions. For the first time since his return, he questioned whether he had made the right decision to put himself out there like this. His phone buzzed, breaking his train of thought. It was a message from Lisa. Are you okay? You've been really quiet today. We can talk when you're ready. Jordan sighed. He knew Lisa was right. He hadn't been himself lately. The pressure was starting to eat at him again, and he wasn't sure how to handle it this time. He had worked so hard to find his voice and his purpose, but now that he had it, it seemed like everyone else was trying to take pieces of it for themselves. The next day, as Jordan walked out of his hotel and into the bright sunlight, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Fans gathered outside, eagerly waiting to catch a glimpse of him. Jordan waved, trying to muster a smile, but it felt forced. He had become a walking symbol, and in some ways, he had lost sight of who he really was beneath all the expectations. Jordan, how does it feel to be the voice of a generation? One reporter asked as he walked by. He paused, looking around at the crowd that had gathered to see him. It felt surreal. Just a few months ago, he was struggling to find his place in the world. Now, he was the face of a movement, the person everyone turned to for guidance and inspiration. It was an honor, but also a burden. It feels like a responsibility, Jordan answered, his voice steady. And that responsibility is one that I take seriously. But it's also a reminder that we can't do everything. We need to take care of ourselves, too. As he spoke those words, Jordan realized just how true they were. The more he gave to others, the less he had left for himself. And if he didn't find a way to preserve his own well-being, he would be of no use to anyone. Later that evening, after the whirlwind of the day had died down, Jordan found himself sitting in his hotel room, contemplating the future. His album was still doing well, and his message was resonating with more people than he ever thought possible. But the pressure was building, and it was starting to feel suffocating. He closed his eyes, allowing the silence to fill the room. For a brief moment, he let go of the expectations, the noise, and the demands. He reminded himself that the reason he started this journey wasn't for fame or recognition. It was for the chance to make a difference. As he reached for his phone, he received a call from Elon. "Hey, Jordan," Elon said. "I heard things have been crazy for you lately. I just wanted to check in and see how you're holding up." Jordan appreciated the concern. "It's a lot, Elon. I thought I could handle it, but sometimes it feels like it's all too much. I'm doing my best, but I'm not sure how much more I can give." "Remember what we talked about before," Elon replied. "You can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself, and it's okay to say no sometimes." Jordan smiled, grateful for Elon's words. He had been so focused on meeting the expectations of others that he had forgotten to listen to the most important voice of all, his own. "You're right," Jordan said, the weight on his shoulders feeling just a little lighter. "I've been trying to do it all, but I can't do everything. I need to find balance again." Elon's voice softened. "I'm proud of you, man. You're doing incredible things. Just don't forget that you deserve to live your life, too. As the conversation ended, Jordan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't have to be everything to everyone. He could still make a difference, but he had to learn how to protect his peace along the way. The journey ahead would be difficult, but it would be worth it if he stayed true to himself. Do you think Jordan's decision to prioritize his mental well-being will help him continue his mission? How can he find balance between his personal life and his public role? What challenges do you think he'll face next? After his conversation with Elon, Jordan felt a shift. It was subtle, but it was there. The clarity he had been searching for was beginning to take shape. The pressures of fame and expectation hadn't vanished, but for the first time in a while, he felt like he could breathe. He could handle it, but only if he learned how to say no when necessary. Still, the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. As the weeks passed, Jordan found himself at a crossroads, torn between his desire to help people and the growing need to protect his own well-being. He had built something beautiful with his music and advocacy, but now he was beginning to feel the strain of balancing both. One afternoon, Jordan sat down with Lisa, who had been his rock throughout this entire journey. She was the one person who could always ground him, and today, more than ever, he needed her insight. "Lisa, I don't know what to do," Jordan confessed. "Staring out the window of the cafe where they Saturday, the momentum is picking up again, and people are counting on me. But at the same time, I feel like I'm losing myself in it all." Lisa nodded thoughtfully, her eyes calm but filled with understanding. "Jordan, you've done more for the world than most people could ever dream of. But you're only human. You can't do it all. The world may need you, but you need yourself, too." Her words echoed in his mind. It wasn't that he wanted to stop the work he had started. It was that he had to find a way to do it without losing himself. He wasn't just advocating for others' mental health. He was advocating for his own, too. Over the next few days, Jordan spent hours reflecting on his options. He could continue down the path he was on, pushing forward at full speed, knowing that the demands would only increase. Or he could step back even further, not just for a break, but for a more permanent shift in how he approached his life and work. Could he still make a difference if he wasn't constantly in the public eye? That evening, Jordan attended a dinner with his manager, who had been pushing for him to take on more interviews and events. As they sat down, his manager immediately launched into the next phase of their plan. "We've got a few more opportunities lined up for you. More concerts, more charity events. People are asking for you. We need to keep this momentum going," his manager said eagerly. Jordan paused, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. "I appreciate all the opportunities, but I think I need to slow down a bit. I can't keep up this pace. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but I can't sacrifice my health to do it." His manager looked surprised but quickly regained composure. "You're the one who knows your limits, Jordan. But you also know how important this work is. People need you." Jordan nodded, knowing that his manager was right in many ways. He wasn't just a musician anymore. He was a figurehead for a movement. But that wasn't the only part of his identity, and he couldn't lose sight of who he was outside of the work. "I know," Jordan replied, "but I can't help anyone if I'm not taking care of myself. I've learned that the hard way." After the dinner, Jordan walked home, his mind racing with the choices ahead of him. Could he truly find a way to balance his public persona with his private life? Could he continue to inspire people without giving up everything he had worked for? That night, he sat down with a notebook and began writing. He wrote about his journey, his struggles with mental health, his rise to fame, and the work he had done to raise awareness. He wrote about his fears, his hopes, and his dreams for the future. And most importantly, he wrote about what he needed. A life that was fulfilling, but also sustainable. He realized something profound as he looked over his words. He didn't have to do it all at once. There was room for growth, for learning, and for change. His mission would continue, but he could be more intentional with how he moved forward. The next day, Jordan made the difficult decision to reduce his public appearances for a while. He would still work on his music, but he would also take time to focus on the behind-the-scenes efforts, writing, planning, and supporting the mental health organizations he cared about, without the constant pressure of being in the spotlight. He called Lisa that evening. "I've made my decision," he said, a sense of peace settling over him. "I'm going to keep going, but on my terms." I'll still do the work, but I'm stepping back from the spotlight a little. Lisa's voice was filled with relief. I'm so proud of you, Jordan. You're doing what's best for you. And in the long run, that's what will help you do the most good. As the days passed, Jordan felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. He had learned that sometimes the most powerful choice you can make is to step back, reflect, and let the future unfold on its own terms. He wasn't abandoning his mission, he was refining it. And in doing so, he was giving himself the space to grow, to heal, and to continue fighting for the cause he believed in. What do you think of Jordan's decision to step back from the spotlight? Do you think it will help him in the long run, or do you believe he should push through the pressure? What do you think will happen next in his journey? After Jordan's decision to scale back his public appearances, he finally felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in months. The world seemed a little quieter now. He spent his days in a more balanced routine, working on his music, reflecting on his journey, and most importantly, devoting more time to the organizations that had been close to his heart for so long. He had always known that the path to healing was a continuous one, but now it felt like he was walking it at his own pace, without the constant rush of media deadlines or public expectations. Instead of pushing himself to be everywhere at once, he chose the projects that resonated most deeply with him. He visited mental health clinics, spoke with young people who had struggled with issues similar to his own, and wrote music that reflected the quiet, introspective moments he had been experiencing. One afternoon, as Jordan sat in the cozy office of one of the clinics he had been working with, a staff member came in to update him on their latest initiative. The program was aimed at providing therapy and support to young people from underprivileged backgrounds who didn't have access to proper mental health care. Jordan had agreed to partner with them, but as the details were discussed, a sense of unease settled over him. The initiative was brilliant, but the logistics were overwhelming. Funding was tight, and there was a lack of resources for the growing demand. Jordan's heart ached as he listened to the challenges the team was facing. This was a cause he believed in deeply, but the reality of making it happen seemed more complicated than he had imagined. As the conversation ended, Jordan took a moment to gather his thoughts. He knew that the mission was bigger than just one person, and it wasn't going to be easy. Still, he couldn't ignore the pull he felt to help in any way he could. But just as he was about to leave the clinic, his phone rang. The name on the screen was unexpected. Elon Musk? Hey, Jordan. Elon's voice crackled through the phone. I heard you've been doing some amazing work lately. I also heard things are getting a bit complicated with the new project. Jordan sighed. Yeah, you could say that. We're hitting some roadblocks with funding and resources. It's frustrating. I thought this was going to be a straightforward partnership, but the reality is a lot more challenging. Elon paused for a moment before responding. I know it's tough. I've been where you are, trying to make a big difference, but hitting walls that feel impossible to break. But remember, no one does this alone. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you need to surround yourself with the right people, people who can help you carry the weight. Jordan nodded, although Elon couldn't see it. I've been trying to keep things manageable, but I can't do it all on my own. I guess I've been so focused on the mission that I forgot to ask for help when I needed it. Elon's tone softened. It's okay to ask for help. I'm here, and so are a lot of people who believe in what you're doing. Let's find a way to make it work together. You don't have to carry the weight by yourself. The conversation left Jordan with a renewed sense of determination. He knew Elon was right. While his mission was important, he couldn't keep trying to carry it alone. He needed to build a team around him, people who shared his vision and were willing to fight for the cause. He also realized that, in order to move forward, he needed to embrace the discomfort of asking for support. He didn't have to be the lone hero. That evening, Jordan sat down to plan his next steps. He reached out to a few close contacts in the mental health advocacy world, asking for advice and offering his support. He also made the difficult decision to bring in a few trusted people to help with the logistics of his new project, understanding that the more hands there were, the lighter the load. As the days passed, Jordan found that his confidence in asking for help was growing. People responded positively, offering not just their time, but their resources and expertise. Slowly but surely, the walls that had seemed insurmountable were starting to come down. However, not everyone was as supportive. A few weeks into this new phase, Jordan received an email from a well-known media outlet. The message was cryptic and alarming. "We've received reports of internal issues within your project. There are whispers about the way you've been handling the program. We would love to get your side of the story." Jordan's heart sank as he read the email. It wasn't just a simple inquiry, it was an accusation. The last thing he wanted was negative publicity for the project, especially when it was in its early stages. But he knew he couldn't back down now. This mission was too important to let false rumors tarnish it. With a deep breath, Jordan drafted a response, carefully outlining the steps he was taking to ensure the project's success. He made it clear that challenges were a part of any worthwhile endeavor, and that he was committed to seeing it through, no matter the obstacles. When he hit send, he felt a rush of anxiety, but also a sense of clarity. For the first time in a while, Jordan felt like he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. The road was still tough, but he was no longer walking it alone. And that, he realized, made all the difference. What do you think Jordan's next steps should be in light of the media scrutiny? How can he continue to grow his mental health initiative while facing these new challenges? Do you think asking for help will strengthen or weaken his mission? The following days were a blur. The media storm that had begun with a simple email escalated quickly. Rumors about the mismanagement of his mental health project spread like wildfire, and Jordan found himself inundated with calls, messages, and accusations. Each article and headline made it harder to focus on the work he had poured so much energy into. The weight of it all pressed down on him, pulling him into a spiral of anxiety. He had never been one to shy away from criticism. He knew that in the public eye, it was inevitable. But this felt different. The accusations, though unfounded, had the potential to derail everything he had worked so hard to build. Jordan spent sleepless nights scrolling through the social media posts, reading the harsh comments, and feeling the sting of every word. He had tried to stay composed, to maintain his focus on the cause, but the pressure was relentless. One afternoon, after receiving a particularly negative email from a former supporter, Jordan stepped outside for some fresh air. The chill of the autumn breeze bit at his skin, but it was a welcome distraction from the heat of the storm inside his mind. He needed a moment to breathe, to think. Lisa called just as he was about to sit down on a park bench. "Jordan, I know you're going through a lot right now, but I need you to hear me out," she said, her voice firm but filled with compassion. "You've built something incredible. Don't let this, whatever it is, define your journey. You're going to get through this. But you have to take a step back and see the bigger picture." Her words cut through the fog of his thoughts. Lisa had always known how to ground him, to remind him of his strength when he felt weak. She was right. The project, the music, the mission, none of it could be defined by this one moment. "I know," Jordan replied, his voice thick with emotion, "but it feels like everything I've worked for is slipping away. It's so hard to keep going when the world seems to be turning against me." "You're not alone in this," Lisa reassured him. "And the people who really matter, the ones who believe in you and your cause, will see through the noise. You've come so far, Jordan. Don't let this moment steal your light." Taking a deep breath, Jordan stood up from the bench, feeling a renewed sense of clarity. The road ahead would be tough, but he couldn't afford to let fear and doubt dictate his decisions. He had to face the storm head-on. The next morning, Jordan made a bold move. Instead of hiding from the media, he decided to confront the issue directly. He scheduled a live interview with a popular news outlet, hoping to clear the air and address the allegations head-on. It wasn't going to be easy, but he felt it was the only way to regain control of the narrative. When the day of the interview arrived, Jordan walked into the studio with his head held high. The questions started off predictably, about the accusations, the funding issues, and the rumors swirling around the project. But instead of defensive answers, Jordan opened up. He spoke from the heart, sharing the challenges he had faced in starting such an ambitious initiative, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned along the way. "I've made mistakes, and I'm not perfect," Jordan admitted. "But I've always been honest with myself and with the people I work with. This project is my passion, and I'm committed to making it work. Sometimes, that means we have to take a step back and reassess. We're working on solutions, and we'll keep moving forward, no matter what." By the end of the interview, the tone had shifted. People could see the sincerity in his eyes, the authenticity of his words. It wasn't just about defending his work. It was about showing that he was human, that he was willing to face the struggles head-on. It was a powerful moment of vulnerability, one that allowed his supporters to reconnect with him on a deeper level. But just as Jordan thought things might begin to calm down, an unexpected twist occurred. A few days later, Jordan received a call that would change the course of his mission. The voice on the other end was familiar, and as soon as he heard it, his heart skipped a beat. "Jordan," the voice said, "it's Elon. I've been following everything closely, and I know things have been tough. But I think I've found a way to help you take this project to the next level." Jordan's mind raced as he listened, but the words that followed were even more surprising than he could have imagined. "I've been in talks with a few major investors who are passionate about mental health and social impact," Elon continued. "They want to partner with you, help with funding, and expand your initiative on a global scale. But more importantly, they believe in what you're doing, and they believe in you." Jordan was stunned. The news felt like a lifeline being thrown into the chaos. With the right financial backing and strategic partnerships, his mental health initiative could grow beyond what he had ever imagined. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for, the chance to make a real, lasting impact. "I don't even know what to say," Jordan replied, his voice filled with awe. "This is incredible. I thought I had lost everything. I thought it was over." "No," Elon said, his voice warm and encouraging. "It's just beginning. You've been through a lot, but this is your chance to push forward stronger than ever. Let's do this together." Jordan hung up the phone feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. The storm wasn't over, but now, for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a solid foundation to weather it. With Elon's support and the new partnership on the horizon, his vision for the mental health initiative could finally reach the scale he had always dreamed of. What do you think of the new partnership Jordan is entering into with Elon and the investors? Do you think it will help or hurt his mission? How do you feel about the way Jordan faced the media scrutiny? Did it change your perception of him? The days following Jordan's phone call with Elon were a whirlwind. The excitement of the new partnership propelled him into an entirely different league. Investors with deep pockets and powerful networks now stood behind his project, and the resources at his disposal were unlike anything he had ever imagined. But with that growth came a new set of challenges, ones he hadn't fully anticipated. Jordan found himself in meetings with business executives, strategizing about how to scale his mental health initiative. There were discussions about global outreach, social media campaigns, and high-profile ambassadors who could help spread the word. The vision for the program expanded overnight, and Jordan was faced with the task of aligning this new direction with the personal, grassroots mission that had always driven him. At first, the excitement of the venture's potential was intoxicating. Jordan reveled in the idea of reaching more people, of making a larger impact. He could already imagine the faces of the young people who would benefit from the program, the communities that would thrive with access to mental health resources. But as the weeks passed, the weight of the changes began to sink in. Jordan's once small, intimate project was now a corporate operation. The very essence of the initiative, the close-knit support system, and the personal connections he had fostered, was starting to feel distant. The focus had shifted toward numbers, growth, and efficiency. Meetings with investors were dominated by discussions of profit margins and measurable success, things Jordan hadn't considered when he first set out on this journey. The discomfort grew as the pressure mounted. He had built this initiative to help people, to offer them a safe space to heal and grow, but now, he was faced with the harsh reality that, at this level, it was more about outcomes and financial sustainability than it was about the personal impact he had envisioned. One evening, after a particularly exhausting meeting, Jordan found himself alone in his office, staring at the city skyline through the large windows. The glow of the city lights felt distant and cold, and for the first time in a long while, Jordan felt a deep sense of loneliness. He had the support of his team, the backing of investors, and the power to change lives, but something was missing. He wasn't sure if he could hold on to the core values that had defined his mission amidst the growing pressures. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Lisa stepped in, carrying a cup of coffee in her hands. She had been a constant presence in his life, offering support and a grounding perspective whenever things got overwhelming. "I brought you some coffee," she said with a gentle smile. "You look like you could use it." Jordan chuckled softly and took the cup from her. "Thanks, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. This whole thing is getting bigger, and I'm not sure I can keep up. I started this to help people, not to become a corporate figurehead." Lisa sat down across from him, her expression serious. "I know. I can see how overwhelming it is. But you've always had this way of connecting with people, Jordan. You've made a real difference. And you don't have to lose that just because things are growing." "I don't know, Lisa. Everything is changing so fast. I'm scared that I'll lose sight of why I started all of this," he admitted, his voice low. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "You've built something incredible, but you're still the same person. Don't let the scale of it all make you forget what really matters. You're still the person who sang on the street and connected with people through your music. That's what people remember about you, not the corporate deals or the investors. You just need to stay grounded in what you believe." Jordan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He had always prided himself on staying true to his roots, but this new world of investors and global partnerships was a far cry from the simple, raw beginnings of his initiative. But Lisa was right. He didn't have to lose himself in the process. He could still use this new platform to amplify the message that had always mattered to him. That mental health wasn't just a statistic. It was a human experience that deserved care, compassion, and support. The next day, Jordan made a decision. He would continue to move forward with the partnership, but he wouldn't allow the corporate world to strip away the core values that had defined his journey. He would find a way to balance the financial side of the initiative with the personal, human touch that had always been at its heart. Jordan called a meeting with his new partners and the team he had built. As he sat at the head of the table, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. "I want to make one thing clear," Jordan began. "This project isn't just about growing it for the sake of growth. It's about helping people, about creating a space where individuals feel seen and heard. I don't want this to become something that loses its soul in the process. We've got to remember why we're here." Elon, who had joined the meeting via video call, smiled and nodded. "I get it, Jordan. We're all here because we believe in the mission. Let's make sure we stay true to that as we scale." The investors, too, seemed to understand. There were some initial concerns about maintaining the initiative's intimacy and personal touch, but after some discussion, they agreed to ensure that the program's core values remained at the forefront of their strategy. Over the next few months, Jordan worked closely with his team to create a balance between growth and authenticity. They implemented measures to ensure that, even as the project expanded, it would maintain its roots in the communities it aimed to serve. They set up a system of local ambassadors, individuals who shared the same values and could bring the personal touch back to the ground level. Slowly, but surely, Jordan began to feel a sense of peace return to the project. It was no longer just a corporate entity. It was a living, breathing force that still had a pulse in the communities that mattered most. And while the challenges were far from over, Jordan knew that he was on the right path, one that stayed true to the heart of his mission. What do you think of Jordan's decision to maintain the personal touch in his growing initiative? How do you feel about the way he is managing the balance between the financial side and the human side of his project? Do you think he can maintain this balance as the project grows even larger? The success of Jordan's mental health initiative had been nothing short of remarkable. The partnership with Elon and the influx of investor support had given the project the resources it needed to grow rapidly. Jordan's message of mental health awareness had reached millions, and new communities were benefiting from the program every day. His team had expanded, the funding was steady, and the media coverage had shifted from skepticism to admiration. But even in the midst of success, Jordan could feel a growing tension within him. The project, now global in scale, was starting to shift in ways he hadn't anticipated. What had started as a humble, personal mission to connect with others was becoming something much larger, and at times, it felt like the soul of the initiative was slipping through his fingers. One afternoon, Jordan was sitting in a meeting with his top advisors and the investors. They were discussing the next phase of the project, a new partnership with a global health corporation that could help amplify the message even more. On the surface, it seemed like an incredible opportunity. The corporation had the reach, the technology, and the global presence to bring the mental health initiative to millions of people around the world. But as the meeting continued, Jordan began to feel uncomfortable. The corporation, while willing to fund the project, also had demands that seemed to clash with the values he held dear. They wanted more control over the messaging, and they insisted on tailoring the program to align with their own interests. They also suggested that some of the more personal elements of the program, the ones that had made it so unique, might need to be streamlined to fit a more corporate model. Jordan was silent for a long moment as he listened to the proposals. His mind raced. On one hand, this was the kind of partnership that could take the initiative to a global scale. It could provide the resources to reach communities that had never been able to access mental health support before. The potential impact was enormous. But on the other hand, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that accepting the deal would mean sacrificing the authenticity of the program. The corporation's demands felt like a step away from the very essence of what he had worked so hard to build. He remembered the days when he had sung on the streets, when his connection with others had been direct and personal. Could he really justify compromising that connection for the sake of progress? As the meeting wore on, Jordan found himself caught between the excitement of the opportunity and the gnawing doubt in his gut. The stakes were higher now, and the choices felt more consequential. He wasn't just deciding for himself anymore. He was deciding for everyone who had believed in his mission, for everyone whose lives had been touched by the initiative. Later that night, Jordan went for a long walk. The weight of the decision pressed on him, and he couldn't shake the images of the people he had met during the early days of the project, the ones who had shared their stories with him, the ones who had looked to him for hope and guidance. Would he be letting them down if he gave in to corporate demands? Lisa called as he was walking through the park, her voice offering a grounding presence amid his turmoil. "Hey, Jordan. How's it going?" she asked. "I'm not sure anymore," Jordan replied, his voice heavy. "I'm facing a really tough decision. The project's growing, but I feel like I'm losing the essence of what it was all about. There's this huge corporate partnership on the table, and it could take everything to the next level. But at what cost? It's like they want to strip away the personal side of everything." Lisa paused before responding, her words measured. "You've worked so hard to get here, Jordan. But you've always said that this was about helping people, not about becoming some big corporation. You need to decide if the price of progress is worth it. Will this partnership allow you to make the kind of impact you've always wanted, or will it change everything you've worked for?" Jordan was quiet for a long time, reflecting on her words. The decision seemed impossible. How could he balance the scale of his ambitions with the need to stay true to his values? Could he really maintain the personal touch that had made the program so special while expanding it on a global level? The next day, Jordan called a meeting with his team. They had come a long way together, and he knew he couldn't make this decision alone. As they gathered around the table, Jordan laid out the situation, explaining the potential partnership and the compromises it would require. "We've grown so much," Jordan said, looking at his team, "but I don't want to lose what made this special. We've always been about real connections, about offering people something genuine. I don't want that to change." Elon, who had joined the meeting remotely, spoke up. "Jordan, I get where you're coming from. The truth is, every project goes through these kinds of growing pains. You're never going to get everything you want, but the bigger question is whether this partnership helps you get closer to your goal. Is the cost worth it if it means reaching more people and making a greater impact?" Jordan looked around the room at the faces of the people who had been with him from the beginning. He saw their support, their belief in the mission, and he knew they were all struggling with the same dilemma. After a long silence, Lisa spoke up. "You don't have to make the decision right away. Take your time. Think about why you started this in the first place. What do you really want to accomplish? And if you can still get there with this partnership, then maybe it's worth considering. But if you feel like it's going to change everything you've worked for, maybe it's not the right move." Jordan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. The decision wasn't just about growth. It was about staying true to the heart of the mission, and that was something he couldn't lose sight of. The days following Jordan's difficult decision were a blur of meetings, discussions, and logistical planning. The partnership with the Global Health Corporation had been finalized, and the program was set to launch on a much larger scale. For a moment, it seemed like the perfect solution to all of Jordan's concerns. The resources, the global outreach, the potential to change millions of lives. It was everything he had dreamed of when he first set out to make a difference. But as the launch date grew closer, Jordan began to feel a shift within himself. The excitement that had once fueled him now felt like a distant echo. The weight of the compromises he had made, the parts of his original vision that had been altered or even erased, pressed on him with a heaviness he couldn't shake. He was still helping people, yes, but was he really doing it in the way he had always envisioned? One morning, as Jordan reviewed the latest marketing campaign for the initiative, he realized how far the message had shifted. The once personal, human-centered approach was now wrapped in corporate branding, with sleek, polished images and catchphrases designed to appeal to a broad audience. The real stories, the ones that had inspired the program in the first place, were now buried beneath a layer of marketing jargon. Is this really the best way to do this? Jordan asked himself, staring at the images on his screen. The faces of the people he had met during his street performances, those who had shared their pain, their hope, their dreams, were gone from the campaign. In their place were smiling models, carefully curated to appeal to an idealized version of what mental health support should look like. It felt like a betrayal. Later that afternoon, Jordan walked into his office to find a message from Elon. It was brief, a simple update on the partnership's progress, but the last line caught his attention. Remember, Jordan, this is about scale. We can't help everyone if we don't grow. Don't lose sight of that. Jordan read the message again. Elon's words were meant to reassure him, to remind him of the bigger picture. But as much as he understood the logic, something inside him stirred. Was success really only about scale? Was the mission just about numbers? Or was it about the people behind those numbers? That evening, Jordan sat in his apartment, reflecting on the path he had taken. He thought back to his first performance on the street, how it had been raw, unpolished, but full of heart. He thought of the people who had approached him after the performance, who had shared their struggles with him, their feelings of isolation, and how just a moment of connection had made a world of difference. It wasn't about growing a global brand. It was about being there for each individual, showing up when it mattered most. Am I losing everything I stood for? Jordan wondered aloud, the question hanging in the air as the city lights flickered outside his window. Lisa called him later that night, sensing that something was off. She didn't need to ask. Jordan's voice told her everything. You okay? She asked, her tone gentle. I'm not sure anymore, Jordan admitted. We've come so far, but I'm starting to wonder if I've lost the essence of what this was about. The project is growing, but I don't recognize it anymore. I feel like it's becoming something I didn't sign up for. Lisa was quiet for a moment, then responded with a softness that Jordan appreciated. I can't imagine how hard this must be. But remember, growth isn't always a straight line. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have all the answers. You started this to make a difference, and you still can. But you have to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. Jordan ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the conversation settling in. Lisa was right, of course, but the sacrifices seemed greater now. He wasn't just giving up some small pieces of the vision. He was watching it morph into something unfamiliar. The personal connections, the raw honesty of the initiative, were slipping away with each step toward global success. The next day, Jordan called an emergency meeting with his team. He needed to address his concerns before they went any further. As they gathered around the table, Jordan spoke from the heart, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. I need to be honest with all of you, Jordan began. I'm having a hard time reconciling the direction this initiative is taking. When we started, it was about connection. It was about helping people in a way that felt real, that felt human. But now, it feels like we're losing that. It feels like we're becoming another company pushing a product instead of a movement that's about real change. Elon, who had joined the meeting virtually, spoke up. I understand your concerns, Jordan. But look, the world isn't going to change by keeping things small. We need to reach as many people as possible, and that requires a level of scalability that doesn't always look personal. The larger the program, the more people we can help, and that's the ultimate goal, right? Jordan met Elon's gaze through the video call, his expression a mixture of gratitude and conflict. Yes, but at what cost? Is the goal to just help people in theory, or to really make a difference in the way that matters to them. I'm afraid we're losing the heart of it. There was a long pause. The room felt heavy with the weight of the decision they were all facing. Finally, Lisa spoke up, her voice calm but resolute. Maybe there's a middle ground, she said. Maybe we don't have to choose between scale and intimacy. There has to be a way to grow the project and still keep the personal touch, the heart that you've always brought to it. Jordan felt a flicker of hope. Could it be possible? Could he really find a way to balance the global impact with the personal connection that had made the initiative so special? The conversation continued late into the night, with the team brainstorming ideas for how to integrate the personal elements of the program into the larger framework. Jordan knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but at least now, he wasn't facing it alone. The days leading up to the final launch of the initiative felt like a whirlwind. Every decision, every conversation, seemed to carry a heavier weight than the last. Jordan had spent countless hours revising the strategy, balancing the need for growth with the desire to stay true to the original vision. The corporate partnership, while necessary for scaling the initiative, had been carefully recalibrated to include more of the personal touch that had defined the early days of the program. But despite the changes and compromises, Jordan knew one thing for certain. The initiative had to stay grounded in authenticity. It wasn't about creating a brand. It was about creating real change. He was determined to maintain that at the core of everything. The night before the official launch, Jordan stood by the window of his apartment, gazing out at the city below. It was a quiet moment, a brief pause before everything changed. His mind wandered back to that first performance on the street, when all of this had started. He had been just a boy with a guitar and a dream, hoping to connect with others through music. Back then, he hadn't known what the future held, but he had known that it was about the people, the connection, the stories. Now, with a global audience at his fingertips, Jordan had to remind himself of the simple truth. This was never about him. It had always been about the people whose voices had been lost, about lifting each other up in the hardest moments. The initiative had evolved, yes, but the heart of it, the core mission, remained unchanged. The next morning, Jordan and his team gathered at the launch event. The room was filled with media, investors, and supporters. The lights were bright, the energy palpable. But as Jordan stood at the front of the room, looking out at the sea of faces, he realized that the true measure of success wasn't in the numbers, the accolades, or even the global reach. It was in the real, personal moments that happened every day, the ones that couldn't be measured, the ones that happened when someone reached out and said, "You've changed my life." As the event began, Jordan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that had come before. The partnership had been finalized, the resources were in place, and the project was set to expand. But as the speeches were made and the crowd cheered, Jordan knew the work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. The true impact of his work would come from the ongoing, everyday interactions, the conversations, the support, the understanding that made each person feel seen and heard. Elon spoke first, praising the growth of the initiative and the lives it had touched. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice booming across the room. Jordan's vision has changed the landscape of mental health awareness, and together, we're going to reach millions more. This is a movement, not just a program. As the applause echoed in the room, Jordan took his turn. He looked out at the crowd, his heart pounding, but there was a calmness in his eyes. "When I first started this journey," he began, "I never could have imagined where it would lead. It was never about the numbers or the headlines. It was always about the people. The faces I met on the street, the voices I heard in the darkest moments. Those are the moments that matter." He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "We've grown, we've changed, and yes, we've made sacrifices along the way. But what hasn't changed is the reason we're here, to make sure no one has to face their struggles alone, to remind each person that they are seen, they are valued, and they are worthy of support." The room fell silent, and for a moment, it felt like everything else faded away. Jordan's words weren't just a speech. They were a reflection of his journey, a testament to the sacrifices he had made and the lessons he had learned along the way. As the event concluded, Jordan felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had done it. The initiative was launched, the message was spreading, and the people who needed it most were being reached. But more importantly, he had stayed true to what mattered. He had found a way to balance growth with authenticity, impact with integrity. That night, as Jordan sat on the rooftop of his apartment, looking out at the city, he reflected on how far he had come. The journey had been full of highs and lows, moments of doubt and moments of triumph. But through it all, he had learned that success wasn't about how big the project got or how many people it reached. It was about staying true to the mission, no matter how difficult the path might be. And in that moment, Jordan knew that his work wasn't finished. There would always be more to do, more lives to touch, more voices to hear. But he had found his purpose, and that was enough. Jordan's journey has been long and challenging, but in the end, he has learned that staying true to the mission is more important than any success or recognition. The message of mental health awareness and connection will continue to grow, but its heart will always remain the same. What have you learned from Jordan's journey? Do you think it's possible to stay true to your values while achieving success? How do you find balance in your own life between growth and staying grounded? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.